This is a video about the humble Acer campestri, or the field maple, sometimes referred to as the English field maple. It's a maple that grows almost wild throughout Europe, and this I always refer to as the poor man's relative of the more flamboyant Japanese maple. The Acer genus is a huge genus of trees. The London plane trees, which is Acer platanus, the sycamore, which is also an Acer, the Canadian maple is also a maple, I think. And so you will find that the Acer genus encompasses a very wide variety of trees. But I like this European or the English field maple very much because it's very similar to the trident maple. Look at that beautiful trunk and the movement that I've created. This is a tree that I created from scratch by growing them in our field. We grow them in the field to get the trunk thick. So the first cut was made here. Then another cut was made there. So you can see how the taper was added. Next cut was made there. Next cut was made there, and so on. So all the time you grow it 10 feet, cut it back, and you get these beautiful twisted angle shapes, and you can grow the branches very easily from scratch. So this is a typical field maple that we produce ourselves from material that we grow in our growing fields. I'll show you some other big ones as well. Those of you who follow my videos will know by now that I love big bonsai. This is typical of this sort of large bonsai that I make. And this one was collected from a nursery which had to move sites, so I dug it up about 31 or 32 years ago. It was about quarter the thickness, and I just chopped it and planted it in my field and grew it more and more till the trunk got thick, and then I chopped the top across and grew all these new branches. So look at the size of that trunk, absolutely massive. And the roots are quite interesting. And the field maple has this beautiful golden yellow color. So they don't often turn red. Sometimes they turn a slight shade of pink, but it's generally a yellow colored tree. I have another one which I grew from a nursery plant. There's a history to this one. This particular tree, I remember purchasing it from a garden center in 1980, and it had a funny forked root. So I tore the tree into two pieces and planted a part of the root on this side, and the other thing was sold. I can't remember when. But over the years, I made a beautiful bonsai, but unfortunately the apex of this side has died, but I can reshape it. But all this is absolutely natural. I haven't done any carving, so if you just let the wood rot, you get this beautiful, beautiful effect. I will try and dig up pictures about this tree because it has a very interesting history. When I bought it, it was only about 1 inch thick in 1980, and over the years it's just grown and grown and grown. So we'll go back and show you some examples of smaller field maples and how we tackle them and shape them. I have 9 field maples to show you, and I'm going to work on all 9 of them. What I want to point out right at the outset is that they were all grown in these little black flower pots. I think this size of flower pot is 1.5 liter, and they are, believe it or not, all the same age. They were grown from seed about 10, maybe 12 years ago. But like most trees that grow, whether they grow in the ground or in pots, they grow at different rates. I have never figured out why. So although they are same age, this tree has a thick trunk, at least inch or inch and quarter thick, and this tree, which is the same age, is only that thick, and yet they are the same age. But I'm going to show you what we will do with each and every one of them. So the field maples are very interesting little trees, very similar to the trident maple, and if you grow them in the ground to thicken, they do thicken very fast and they produce the image just like the trident maple. So when we get raw material like this, the first thing I do always is to tease the surface of the soil and get it down to the base level where the roots start to show. Never waste what is below the surface, because you'll find beautiful surface roots, and that is what the Japanese call the nebari, or the base of the tree. And the base is what makes it look powerful and anchored into the ground. So we will tease away till we get to the bottom of it, as it were. So although they are all the same age trees, I'm going to show you what variation we have. So these trees I always grow and then I chop it off. This tree would have been chopped off there, and the new leader becomes this part. And then I chop this, and then another leader pops up. So whenever you chop, you will get new shoots growing. So if I wanted to make a simple bonsai out of this, without being too sophisticated, so probably you don't need these. Usually if the branches are too thick, I prefer to remove them and let it produce thinner branches. So the base is quite nice there. It's got quite a lot of interesting movement there, so I can chop harder. If I don't want the tree to be too big, I can chop it there and make the tree come back on itself. Get rid of that. So that's back to the structure. So that's how I would deal with that one. And next year we'll get lots more branches growing from there. So that's number one done. Let's move on to number two. I would point out that the field maples are all extremely vigorous trees. Look at the roots that have come from underneath. Now, the field maple is quite unlike the other maples. In fact, the Japanese maple is different in this respect, because what I'm going to show you here are these roots. The field maple can propagate from root cuttings. Like the crab apples, they propagate from root cuttings. I don't know why the Japanese maple cannot be propagated from root cuttings. It's one of those strange things. I'm not a plant geneticist or plant physiologist, so I don't know the answer. But this is all from trial and error. So if you plant these roots in a pot, in fact you can even plant these little bits, they will produce shoots. So they will produce shoots. So you get a nice mommy tree from that. So I don't usually waste anything. So I will keep all these roots and I'll make my guys plant them into little pots, and I will get small plants from it. So every little root makes a new plant, and that's how we make a little living, honest living, from just selling little cuttings like that, rooted cuttings. So now this tree, okay, I've taken the roots from the base. I can probably take it out of the pot. So again, the first thing I do, so by the time you've seen this video, you will probably be inspired to do it yourself. And it just shows you the procedure I follow when I make these bonsai. I don't mind giving you all these secrets. A lot of people don't realize how these things are made, but here you are, secrets for free. So this one has a very ugly root there. When you get thick roots like this, going back on itself. They're not pretty, so I would get rid of it. But you remember what I said? They produce plants from the roots, so we'll keep this for a root cutting, because it's not going to be a nice surface roots to form the nibari of the tree. So that will be a nice thick plant, so it could have a nice bend straight away. So let's look at this tree again. Some more ugly roots I get rid of. So if you want to make nice small bonsai, this is the way to go about it. How easy is that? You may or may not wish to wire at this stage. If you like to do a bit of wiring, you can wire a bit like that, and you get a very nice looking slender tree to grow like that. So that's number 2 finished. Let's go on to the third one. Every tree is going to be different. So more root cuttings. So this is the boring work that I have to do. I stand these plants on the ground, and when you stand it on the ground, the roots just penetrate the pot and seek the soil or seek the moisture. And if you leave it too long, it's quite a job digging it up. So, and all this has happened only in the last year. Just shows you how vigorous the field maple is. And I've got some other field maples which are the subject of another video, and they have trunks about 6 to 8 inches in diameter. And they were grown in the ground, but they've been in the pots for the last few years. So they're making some beautiful tapers. But I wanted to show you just these young ones to show you what we do with them. So again, I always get quite excited when I see the base of the tree, because you never know what you find below the surface. This one promises to be quite interesting. The only trouble with growing trees in flower pots is that the flower pots make the roots go round and round, so that's quite annoying. If you plant it in the ground, the roots spread more radially, so you don't get so much of this problem of the roots going round and round. But anyway, there are more root cuttings for me, because I'm not going to use these circular roots, so they will be just removed. Lots of ugly roots. See all these roots? I don't need them. And the more I tease, you see it's got a beautiful base there, thick base. So that's going to be an interesting plant. So every plant is different. So what shall we do with this one? So because the root is spreading this way, the front is quite nice either this way or that way. So I can use that as a first branch, use that as a leader. Or I could use this side and use this as the leader. I think I always got to remind myself that don't be too greedy. I can wire that down, wire this. There are too many branches at the back. But really I should take that off. That's ugly, that's very ugly. So we will take that bit off. So we'll chop it with this branch lopper, so that get a more smooth taper. So this is how taper is made. So I've got to be patient and let this grow. So next year I'll get more branches from there. So I won't get an instant bonsai in this case. So I'll be a bit patient and wait for more branches to grow. But meanwhile, the base is very beautiful. So this has got tremendous potential. So this is just to show that sometimes you have to wait, and looking at the base of the tree, the more interesting roots, lots of congested roots. So these are all going to make beautiful root cuttings, and they will become used for small plants. So all those roots will become plants. So that will be cut there. So that will make a tree. This will make a very interesting tree. Look at that. Look at the shape of that. So nothing is ever wasted. As they say, you know, when the Chinese do cooking, they will eat the feet, they will eat the beak. Every part of the bird is used. So this is very similar, because I'm going to use all the roots, all the shoots, and they will all end up as bonsai in one form or another. The more I delve into this, the more interest I find. See, below the surface, they're just going to be hidden, and rather than just waste it, I'm going to make root cuttings from it. So this one plant will produce about 10 or 12 separate bonsai. So that is the base of the tree. Nice bole there, B-O-L-E, bole. This tree could even go this way. And then all these are beautiful, mature root cuttings. So I will get straight away plants with 1/4-inch pencil thick trunks. That will be a nice bonsai. Look at it with the bend. So nothing will be wasted. So that is another one. Number 3. Some are easy, some are difficult. So the annoying thing is having to get rid of all these roots. I'm showing you what is called warts and all, because I don't want you to get the impression that just by doing a few cuts with the secateurs you get a bonsai. There's the preparation to do, and this preparation, although tedious, is all part of the fun of making bonsai. This is going to be a pretty long video, and from the feedback that I've had from some of you, I get the impression that many of you don't mind seeing the long videos. So this will be a fairly long one, just to reinforce what I'm doing. Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera all the time because I have to keep an eye on the plant. If I turn my head away, I may cut my finger off. So let's tease away. Again, these ugly roots which have gone round and round. We don't need them. Root cuttings, more root cuttings. If only the Japanese maple could propagate from root cuttings, we would be laughing. But sadly, no. Okay. Not all trees need to have thick trunks. Many of us get obsessed with thick trunk trees. But trees with slender trunks can also be graceful. In fact, while we're talking about Japanese maples, one should always remember that the Japanese maple is meant to be a very feminine tree. Nowadays, when people are so obsessed with diversity and gender equality. We don't like to refer to things as feminine and masculine, but Japanese maples and maples that have thin trunks are very slender and graceful. So this is the type of image we try to create when we use slender trunk trees. Don't need to be thick and chunky all the time. So that's another one. Now this one, as I said, they're all the same age, but look at the thickness of the trunk of this tree. Quite out of character with the rest of them. Again, look at the masses of roots underneath. So vigorous. Absolutely vigorous. As I said, sometimes the roots go right into the ground and you have to dig it up with a spade. This tool that I'm using is called a root cutter. And the root cutter is exactly what this tool is doing. It's cutting the roots. Not a branch cutter, but a root cutter. So this is how I use it. Very useful for removing these roots that grow out of the pots. Again, beautiful base. Beautiful, beautiful base. But where we get these circular roots, we just get rid of it. Certain species, like the field maple, are so vigorous that you can cut them with impunity and they will just grow. You don't have to worry about it. It's one of those species that I always call trees that are impossible to kill. If you kill a field maple, then I think you are doing something drastically wrong. But it's one of those trees that cannot be killed easily. So again, beautiful base there. It's got lovely movement. Look at that. It's just grown naturally. So the first cut was there. Second cut there. You can still see the little stub that I left. Third cut I was done here. So that's what I've done this year only. And look at that beautiful effect I've got. So without any effort, I've already got a beautiful bonsai like that. And that would be a lovely thing, just as it is. So put it in a bonsai pot and we've got a lovely tree. And then we go on to the next one. These I took out of the pot yesterday just to discover what was below there. So it's got lovely base. So this tree I chopped there last year to produce a short tree. So that's that one done. Now this one I want to show because you have again a very interesting ugly root. I don't know if I can use it. I know I sometimes use exposed roots in my bonsai, but that is a bit over the top. I think that is really ugly. So I don't want to keep that, so let's get rid of it. So with the big loppers, but as I said all along, nothing is ever wasted here. We will use every single bit. And this is going to make such a beautiful bonsai with a twist. Look at that. Look at that tree. It's going to sprout from there, and that will make a beautiful bonsai. So that root will be saved. And it's just gone round and round in circles around that flower pot. So I don't think this is particularly pretty. So we will just get rid of it. I will stop when I find that there is insufficient root left. But what I see is that they can all be utilized. Although I say that these are ugly roots, I'm sure someone's going to make a comment saying that they consider it very beautiful. But I always respect other people's views because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I've always maintained that different cultures view beauty in a different way, and you just got to respect it. The exposed root style that some of the bonsai in China are made into, it's not to everyone's taste. Some people rave about it, others don't. So look at that. Again, nice bonsai can get out of that. So all these will be saved. So all those ugly roots have come off. And there's another thick root here. Why waste that? That will make a nice bonsai too. So there's still sufficient root here. I might be even tempted to take that, but I think it could be stretching it too much. So there's enough root here to plant back into the pot and make a nice bonsai. So it got a nice stump. You can make it that tall. If I don't want the bonsai to be that big, I can cut it down here and have a shorter bonsai. Usually people are a bit greedy, you know that word I always like using. And they try to keep as much of the stem as possible, but really to get a good looking tree with good proportion, I should cut it down to there, and that is more in proportion. So next year I'll have a full head of little twigs and branches. So that's how I start doing those trees. And then there's one final one. No, there's a couple more. No, there's this one I forgot. Now this one is very interesting. This one is interesting because there are many, many options. Whenever there are options, it makes the choice not difficult, but it becomes very intriguing because there are so many things you can do to get a good solution. So this tree, if I keep the two trunks, normally the twin trunks look ugly like this. So for conventional bonsai, or many of the bonsai purists, they would regard this as a very ugly solution, where you have the twin popping up there. But I try not to be too obsessed by conventional thinking. So if we keep the two, I still think it could be quite an interesting tree. And I say it's interesting because you do find trees like this growing in nature, so that could pass off as an interesting bonsai. Very natural looking bonsai, not the typical triangular shape, you know, but this is more in keeping with the way you find trees growing naturally in its natural habitat. So I'm tempted to keep the two. You could, if you wanted, to remove this one and just have that trunk line, or even remove this one. No, I think this one, if you wanted to remove one, this would be removed. But I like to keep the two because it suits this particular tree. And then there's another final one here. I've given you more than your fair share of examples. So remember, you can get field maple. Those of you who live in Europe, they're sold as hedging plants. So they're quite cheap to buy. But training them into bonsai does take a bit of time. So you don't always have to use the Japanese maple, but of course you don't have the beautiful red color that you get with the Japanese maple. Now this I dug out from another lot because it has two trunks, and this is a typical twin trunk. Yes, this is one tree. Sometimes you plant two seedlings together, you get that effect. But the twin trunk, the classic twin trunk, always starts at the base, joined at the base, rather than higher up. So this is more in keeping with conventional style. You could have like a mother and child, one tall and one short. So that would be quite nice. And as I said, you don't always have to have thick trunks, so the slender trunk, twin trunk, would be quite a nice bonsai. So this is how you make different styles of bonsai using the same species, the English or the European field maple. There you go.